Hi, welcome to my channel. And today I'm very glad to have a special guest. That is Ros. She is from the Cult Information and Family Support based in Sydney. And welcome, Ros.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, she is the president of CIFS. So some of you might know I exit from a cult group end of 2017. And at the time, I was into depression, and I didn't even know I was involved in the cult until I get to know. I spoke to a friend, and he actually told me you are involved in the cult. You need help. He introduced Rose to me, and then that's how I get in touch with Rose. And she's very helpful. In 2018, all my recovery process, Rose has given me lots of advice and help, assistance as well.
Mhm.
So, and I start to get to know how the cult group be operating, and she gave me so much information, and that's why I'm so glad today we have this opportunity to invite Rose to give us some information about cult. And let's welcome Rose.
It's good to be here.
Can you let us know what are the common questions or the information people should know about cult? Like what is cult? Can you give us a bit more background information? And for myself, I didn't know until I experienced the event I exit. I have no knowledge of it. And it's only through Rose I start to realize what I'm getting involved with.
Sure. Look, I think no one really understands a cult unless they have studied and have the experience of being in a cult. I certainly didn't when our daughter became caught up in a cult over 20 years ago, and she now, and of course, left the cult after we got the knowledge and the information we could give her. So it's really important that people do understand what represents a group that is the buzzword. Yes, it's called a cult. It can be called a high demand group who's demanding a lot from you and taking a lot of your free time, your personal time, and your money. And also it can be a cultic relationship where someone starts controlling who you see, what you can do, and is psychologically using methods that take away your freedom to choose things that are very normal that you would in a relationship to do that isn't controlled by another person above you. So that in a way is why we're all vulnerable. And any of us can get caught in a cult that looks good on the outside. So I think, it's important that we do understand so we can ask the questions initially when we get in to find out more.
It's very hard, really. For me, no one will really join a cult in the first place. But I believe the process itself of all this manipulation, controlling is starting bit by bit. It's very subtle that you're not able to identify, and it's like a spoon feed. Each time they give you a little bit.
Yes, because the cult really doesn't give you all the information. It gives you a lot of love bombing, and it gives you a lot of feeling like, yeah, this is what I was looking for, because you go into a group that tends to be there answering some questions at the beginning. So people are very much recruited into a cult by the methods that are used without knowing that you are, in a way, love bombed. You are given a lot of good feelings about what you can learn and what you can do and how you can be a better person. So a lot of altruistic and very lovely people get caught into these groups, believing things that they are then no longer to question, because questioning is not right. It's someone trying to pull you away from the truth, and the truth is whatever that group is promoting, and it can be in all types of interests. It can go right through a broad spectrum of different types of interests that people have, but at the top there will be an authoritarian leader of a pyramid-based organization that will be telling you how you must live your life and in a way controlling you without you knowing that you've taken on board a lot of these things without being able to disagree or to question that person who is now wanting the power, the money, usually, and the feeling of, you know, being this super person who's got this amazing belief that they're pushing, and people will, you know, do and believe things that they would never have done had they known all of the things at the beginning. So there's deception, and then there's a slow incremental step of each thing being a little bit more and a little bit more information, and it's like, wow, you know, I didn't know this before, because you're not able to critically look at things when you're in a cult. And I think that's what the message must be, that we must always be checking out, you know, those things that look too good to be true, because they usually are.
Yes, yeah, it happened to me too, because I define it's too good to be true, so I believe everything they say. Yes, and I never really questioned them, and that's when I think, you know, everything gets started, because you're sort of giving away your power, because what they say, you take it, and then slowly into this controlling, being controlled, the controlling mode. Yes, so that's building up slowly and slowly.
That's right, and it's difficult.
Can we give us some more insight, like for people to, like, even they start getting involved and they know something wrong, then they can start to pull themselves out.
Yeah, I think now we have just an amazing amount of information on the internet. There's been academic studies going into how some of the cult leaders that are still in existence in countries that we know of. We know that there are people controlled in a whole country by a powerful leader. And so what we've got to look at is history. We know what happened with Hitler and the many people that were just totally, you know, destroyed, and the Jews were the ones that were the targeted people, and everyone went along with it who were other, you know, were not Jewish. They became fearful, because if they didn't do that, then they may be the ones. So we've got to understand that there's been huge amounts of, you know, academic studies, and we do understand now so much more. So get on the internet, put in the name of the group you're a bit worried about, put cult at the end of it, and you often can read more about it and think, oh my goodness, there's people who've left that and they've been emotionally abused, they've been taken in for, you know, giving a lot of money, they have been wasting their own time where they can enjoy, you know, what is their own interest, rather than getting taken down that road. So that's one thing I would definitely say, is to check out things initially. Don't just take it for granted that this is truth, that there is a lot of stuff that's put around something that's got a wee bit of truth. So, you know, that's the bait and the trap. And a good trap is really hard to get out of. You know, it keeps you where they want you. So the bait is like a lobster pot, if you like. It's got a nice little piece of tasty morsel, and you go in to get it. But you don't realise there's all sorts of other things happening around that little tasty morsel that's now trapped you to go further and further into things that really are so controlled, you know, through psychological dynamics that we understand.
Yes, I think it's a very good idea to check out some information. If any group you want to get involved with for deeper level, it's always a good idea to check around, because there always some feedback or some, I know some occult support group, they put up a list, they do some investigation, and they don't put up just random, you know, they're responsible what they are, they're professional organizations, so they're more reliable source for you to find out and help you to identify the organization you're getting involved. And you can always, they have like an international support network. You can always Google all this information online to where it's closer to you. Apart from that, any other common things people need to know about the account?
Well, there's so many that it could take a long time to go through them.
Yeah.
I think what you have to understand is that the cult leaders can look very loving and very kind and very giving. But in a way, we know that all of these people have a need for power and control. And yes, you know, there's borderline personalities that decide that they will be able to even get out of one cult and start up another cult because they've learnt things and it works. But a cult leader doesn't have true empathy in the way that we understand empathy. So if someone is really upset and harmed, you know, the true empathy would kick in and you would be counselling kindly that person, or you would be not trying to put them down even further. So what cults thrive on is powerful leaders who are somewhat borderline or narcissistic in their feeling of having that power. So they project a lot of this onto the members. In other words, if a person is questioning, then how dare they question? How dare they not obey the authority that is in now this pyramid-shaped organisation, with those that are at the top a little closer to a lot of the other things, but at the bottom of the pyramid were people just getting the little tasty morsels that keep them going and wanting to get to the top in many ways, because that's where you're told you've finally made it. And we know cults that do that. We know about being clear in another cult that we can really have, that has been studied. So I think understanding that there will be repercussions for you emotionally, psychologically, physically, through sleep deprivation, through being kept so busy, you have no time for your family. You're often cut off from friends and told that, you know, it's best that you break away from a lot of people who are negative about what you've joined. So they've cut off already the basis for the very people that love you the most and want to just share where things are going off in a direction that is really, really dangerous for you as a person to have your freedom and to choose for yourself through critically thinking, you know, through using that and being accepted for using that. Yeah, so, you know, there's a huge area of how people, you know, stay in cults, sometimes 20 years. So now they have to face 20 years of giving up their life for a cause that was really absolutely not any truth in what they were believing, and then start again. So emotionally, physically, and money-wise, it is really difficult for people who leave cults, and that's why we want to support people, support them, and know that there's people that understand and that they're not alone in coming out of the cult. So that's one way that CIFS operates and works and gives a little bit of insight into, I guess the personality of people who want power and take control over your life instead of you having the control.
Yes, I think it's very subtle because I have this experience. They use maybe some idol, or it's like with a divine, how to say that, a figure, and then the projection making you give your power away. Like you have to obey someone in order to get like a soul liberation or get to the point you get, you know, whatever the goal you want to achieve. And you have to follow through certain, they have lots of rules. I think you can, you know, like,
Exactly.
you can have a behavior code, dressing code. You have many sets of rules. And it make you feel like it's in a way of control, really. Because
you're absolutely right in saying that, because we know through the studies, and there've been many, you know, people in recent times that have put out wonderful definitions of a cult or wonderful ways that we can assess it. And one of the simpler ways is knowing that there will be behaviour control. So, you know, that's the behaving how you dress, what you eat, where you go, who you mix with, all of that. So it's about virtually everything in your behaviour for the given day or for each day. Then there's information. So if we think of BITE, behaviour control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. So information control is really very damaging, because information is the fuel that we need to make decisions in our life. Imagine going for a job and thinking, that sounds wonderful, but you've only been given half of what you have to do. You don't know the rest of that information. Well, cults do this. They give you a little bit of information and control the rest of the information. So you aren't able clearly in your mind to use the information you don't have to assess it at the beginning. If you'd known everything you had to do to be a good member of a spiritual cult, or a cult that's professing to have truth in another area of that. So information control is by cutting off families again and cutting off friends. It's controlling what information you get, and you're told that it could be the devil trying to get in and stop you from being more in tune with the spiritual group that you're in, whether it be through a Christian, through a Buddhist, through any of the major religions that have split off into being a cult, or even made up people's ideas. So that's a good one. Thought control. Now you think, well, why are my thoughts controlled? Because if you start to think about something that's negative, that's evil. You have to put it back to saying, my leader has the truth. I must obey. I must get with it. And certainly in the Moonies, or the Unification Church that was around and very big in the 1900s, really late 1900s, they would have to chant, crush Satan, crush Satan, crush Satan. So you see how your thoughts are no longer your own, in that you can't go further with that. So the thoughts, and then the emotions. The emotions are very much a way that people are controlled through emotional manipulation. And we don't know about that.
No.
We don't have lessons at school. We don't have lessons in society to say that, there are a lot of con artists that, put up lots of things that just normal people go into thinking it's going to help them financially, perhaps with their retirement or whatever. And we know that we have to be aware of asking the questions. But think of behaviour control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. That is the whole of you for the duration that you're under that belief and can't question it. So yes, you can question. They have little bits of truth, and you can keep the little bits of truth, but you have to question everything, and then gather back what you think is absolute in being able to look at it in a critical manner and check it out, in a way.
Yeah, because what I found is they might give you 90% truth, make you believe, and then that's the way the 10% or a certain percentage where all this manipulation started without you knowing it. It's very subtle, because these people, they are very good with manipulating all this information, everything. So it's really for normal people, don't have any question, not thinking much, really won't be noticed. It's not really noticed.
And it's a protective mechanism too. You're going along with it because if you're the only one, then you are, seen as just being absolutely out there without any understanding at all of what you should be doing. And peer pressure. I mean, we know that there's been studies done where students have been brought in, and it's been a study to see how many change their mind about a simple test, which is lines on a piece of paper to see if their eyesight, and we want to know people that are getting these right. And in the end, the peer pressure, there's one person that is the one that's being brought in without knowing what the test is really about. All the others know that they have to give, after a while they give the wrong question to which line is the longest in height, so there's all different heights. And by the end of the test, more than probably, I think it was about 60% went along with what all the other students were saying. And that was within just, an hour or something, or just for the duration. So you can understand that we don't want to be the odd person out. So we want to be, in a way, we want to be with everyone. If they're believing it, then they're intelligent people. So why would I go against that? So that's another thing I think we have to, just be aware that we have control, that we have the ability to question.
Yeah. And also sometimes you trust your intuition because you feel something not right, and you can always talk to someone. It's sometimes the outsider can see clearer than yourself. Yeah, so it's same as like my husband had been reminding me from the very beginning, but I still I wasn't. And I said, oh, you don't understand, but who is the one didn't understand? Now we know.
Exactly. And sometimes people can be really down on themselves and feel really bad that they didn't listen. But I think the greater lesson is that you've learned something, that you can help others, and that's the experience of CIFS. We've all undergone someone that we've loved being in a cult and being taken away by those methods that we're talking about. So, you can use it for a greater purpose, as you're doing in a way, to spread the word that, just check things out, and which is great.
So we know how some cult group they've been operating. Can we also know what sort of people are the easily targets in terms of for the cult group to aim for?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I think at some time in our life we're all searching for something that's vulnerable. A lot of people who've moved away from a country area and have gone to the city, and they find it really hard to make friends and get in with a group of people that are like-minded or at least have similar interests. There's people that travel, and that in the United States was a very big way. A lot of Australians were getting into the Unification Church and some other cults that were attracting young people. Lots of spiritual groups that started up also. So I think it's vulnerability. I think at the time, if you've got a really happy life that you're quite fulfilled with, and nothing going on, perhaps, through bereavement as well, through people who've lost loved ones, they're at a loss, they're at a bad time in their life. That's where cults try to recruit those vulnerable people. So that's one big area. And I think that, overall, if we knew at the beginning that there was deception, but we don't. No. So that's an area as well. But certainly they tend to want people who've either got jobs, so they've got money. They don't always, once upon a time it was like you lived in a commune, or you joined a group like the Hare Krishnas, and you sort of virtually dedicated your life to totally living together in a group sort of situation. Now there are professional people, that go off to work, they earn a good living. But even if someone's on Centrelink, that's okay too, because they know that they can get you to work for, giving what what you can out of your Centrelink. So they're often poor while the leader gets rich, because they will still demand something for the spiritual help you're getting through them. So, there's all of these things about how people, get targeted. And I say that because, as Joy said, you don't join a cult, which is a word that we can describe, or a group. Let's say you don't join a group because it looks like it's going to do all these things to you. It looks very, acceptable. So that's an important area to understand too. If you get, sort of someone that's tending to sort of be just too loving, too much, pulling you into that area of, yes, just come and do this personality test. That would be great. And that's another way we know one of the big groups, such as Scientology, operate by getting people first in the door. And then from then on, as I said, those other types of thought reform techniques are there working.
Lots of people, like for myself, why I get involved is because I was seeking for spiritual development, like a spiritual growth, spiritual awakening. But of course, they provide what you need. But normally, if you go to normal workshop, when you finish, and then it's okay because they offer some you learn, but that's fine. But when they start to engage to you into deeper level, like how you think, how you live your life, is something you need to be aware of, because that's where the control start getting in. Because the group I joined at the beginning, they tell you you are the sovereign being. But then slowly, they start to make their own, give you a different direction. And because already you believe, you trust them, so it just takes spoon feed to you to take whatever they give to you. And it's, maybe there's some new information I didn't know, and I just took it. And just slowly go into the traps.
So the rules change.
Yes,
that's
the
rules
thing.
change. There's times that you feel like, wow, this is great. You've been given a bit more freedom. And then I know the group my daughter was in, it was like they suddenly restricted where people could go between boundaries in a way. And that's all part of the thought reform of what's happening in your head at the time, that you'll be in trouble if you don't obey a rule that doesn't mean anything. But then they'll change that again. So there's changes, there's things you can't get your head around. It's just too much to even try to work it out. So you just go along with it to keep the calmness and the feeling like you're going to be okay, surviving in this atmosphere, and shut out those doubts that probably came and went. Because if you doubt too much, then you're going to be targeted.
Yeah, I think that the change of rule is really a good indicator, because if you are sharing something is the truth, as you said, why you change it? It should be straight. It should be all the way from the very beginning. So if it's changing what you're saying, that means then what's the first version you gave me? What is that?
Exactly. And groups will talk about love a lot. And especially in split away groups of maybe Christian or other groups that have basically that feeling that, love your neighbour as you love yourself, do unto others as you would want to do to them to do to you, do that kind and loving thing. But love's changed into another way. So their type of love would be even using some physical dimension. Say for instance, in a group that my daughter was in, if someone's grandparent died or a sister was having a wedding in another place, they would be banned from going to that as punishment in a way, because they've changed the rules. You didn't do well enough. So you have to now forego, unless you go out, and some of them are recruiting on the streets, get more people into your group. So can you see that love is turned upside down? It's, well, I'm loving you by punishing you. Now we don't as a loving society use punishment when you've done nothing wrong, but their rule is sacrosanct. It's above everything. You must obey what I'm saying, because I am the spiritual source, only the spiritual source that you can really find your past and your future.
And I think a true spiritual leader, I don't say they are not good spiritual leader right there, but another indicator you can see is the love and compassion, how they practice. If the love is conditioned, it's not really love. Because provided if you don't follow this, then you don't get the love you have. So this is another indicator. If you make mistakes, so what? Because we learn from mistakes. But if they're using that to target you, to manipulate you, or you make you feel guilty, there's something behind it to think about.
Exactly. And the thing that's very telling is when people do choose to leave, whether it's through the information that they've got so that they can start to really critically look at what they had to do while they're in the cult, or whether it's because she was so, so exhausted through what you've been put through that you just either walk out, some people crawl out, because it's like, I don't have any energy left. What's happened? You can be, quite desperate in your mental state. And that's very acknowledged by a lot of the members who leave these types of groups, and all practicing similar things, but for a different cause perhaps. But I think, knowing that, when my daughter left, she was esteemed when she was there. She was not the top leader, but she was given a leading role in that organisation. And everyone adulated her in a way and said, oh, it's so wonderful. And, she's a very giving person, so she was still that person, but she had to follow the rules and be harsh with people. But when she left, through a lot of information that we were able to give her from someone that understood the group she was in very, very well, she was then spoken of badly. She was given, all the others had to shun her. In other words, they had to not talk to her, not to be friends with her. No one phoned her to see how she was going. She went through this emotional transition of being so highly into that group that she thought was the only group that practiced her way to have, true salvation, to being absolutely without any of those friends that she'd accumulated and cut off many of her old friends, plus out of her family. So there was this reintegration into real life. And that needs, I guess, people to understand that there's help, that they're not alone, that they can understand they have been exploited and controlled. So that's important to know.
Because I also find it's a very hard process, even just to get out. Because not every group let you exit easily. So maybe Rose can give us example how people exit. In my case, that is even after exit, people they still try to harassing, and maybe Rose can give us some.
Yeah, it is hard. I used to say when my daughter was in the group that it's sort of like she's in a prison with bars, only there's no bars. And interestingly, I talked to the leader about the way and always being sort of controlled, almost giving up a dream job and becoming part of that particular organisation. And he said, there's no bars. She's free to walk anytime she wants. She was trapped in her mind.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we have to understand, that we've all got minds that can take on board something that's truth, which are lies. And unless we get out of that place and let our own minds restore. And so that's where people can either be counselled out. Sometimes they agree to look at information, and in a loving way it's given to them about how our minds work, and about, what is truth and what isn't truth, what has got, absolute, evidence that this is totally not the group that you think it is. So there's counselling out, and that is a great way, but many people walk out because they just get sick of being used, and they just have a doubt, is this real? I can't keep going in this group. So walkouts, and like I said, burnouts, they're so burnt out that they just, they just leave. And that is quite tragic because, they often don't have resources to look up these things. They can't get in and say, I'll help myself out of this. So we know that there are many affected people in Australia, thousands, who've been in these situations. And our governments don't look into the harm. They should be looking at accountability, and there should be places that they can go for help to psychologically understand, where they've been, so that can be funded somehow for people who have been abused and taken advantage of. So I'm hopeful that further down the track there'll be more things in place, but we have tried often to bring this to, both the state and the federal government to say, look, there should be accountability when they have taken people, and many people do suicide, and that's another thing that's very sad because they just don't see any way out of this fog.
Yeah, because normally some group easy to leave. Then you just left, you just leave the group without that. That is not too bad. That's the easy exit. But some you have to go through, as Rose said, some psychological or physical abuse process before you can. They really, to the extent you can't cope. You feel like you can't take it anymore, and then you just have to walk your way out. But by the time you walk out the door, you already broken. You don't have money, you don't have job, you don't have friends, and you got nothing. So that's normally, the way they drain you out to the extent that you have no value.
Exactly.
Even when you exit, you feel like, there you go. But what they can do after you exit, because there are so many tactics they are using, because they are very good with all these.
They're still targeting you, still putting,
Yes.
And I think that's what hurts a lot, because in the group, you've been seen as a good person, and a person that's doing well.
Yes.
And then suddenly you are targeted with all of these made-up lies that happen in a lot of groups. Some groups perhaps just let people go and say, well,
it's not for you.
That's not, they will probably say don't associate, especially if they've got information
because I found
that they can share about the group.
Yes, because I found the group itself, they need to justify themselves that whoever left the group, that's the person's problem, not the group's problem. So they will make you look at what's wrong with the person that is leaving. So when the group are involved, what they did is they will have confession. They certain target people. You need to do heaps of confession, even for some random, small, very little things. Even a thought, they can drain you like you are a criminal just to have that thought. And so this is all. They even record everything to show the existing members how the behavior of this person, so they can engage to believe the wrongdoing of the person, and then to keep following the group which they chose to believe. So this is some similar technique used by some cult group, I believe. I think Rose probably can give us, you probably know some.
Yes, well, no, you've said it quite well, and I think that there's always those people that also lead, which I think we should think about, is that don't have a family member there for them to, they're the hardest. And sometimes they go from group to group. They've left one group, but they sort of feel lost. So they're vulnerable to getting into someone else's group with a similar type of belief. And that means that they're abused all over again, or they're kept in that trap away, in a way. So I think for society to understand, I think we have to realize that we're all vulnerable, because a lot of people just say, oh, that would never happen to me, or that would never happen to my family. My children would be too smart not to get into that. Do you know what I mean? And yet it's just that they weren't at the wrong place at the wrong time to get someone to introduce them to something that they had an interest in. So, if it's a flying saucer cult, probably not many people are that interested to really want to go and believe that there's flying saucers all around the place. Or some of the groups at Heaven's Gate, where they suicided and they were going to catch a Hale-Bopp comet, and Jonestown, where they were induced 500 people died drinking cyanide in Kool-Aid. So I think what we have to understand is that in the continuum of cults, there's the really, really extreme that take lives. But there are also up towards the top more moderate cults that are perhaps easier a bit to get out of, but are still damaging. Or we wouldn't call it a group that's using dynamics that take away a person's freedom of choice. So I think what we've got to understand, that the human rights that we have in this country means that people are free to choose and be acceptable. through that choice. Making that choice is their freedom of belief and of how they live their life. But when people are coerced and where there's psychological manipulation being used, we have to look at that as a population, as people that are in this country and have come across perhaps something that was an escape, they didn't get more involved, or that we question whatever we take on board. We're always changing, you know, in a way that's the main thing that we've got, is to look at things and then look at that again and say, was that truth? I believed it then, but was it really? Let me examine that and let me look at it.
Yeah,
So,
because sometimes when people exit the cult group, sometimes they'll be drawn back because sometimes they'll try to get you with.
They can't live without being in that group. Yeah.
Yes, and also cult group just needs supply. they just won't let you go easily. They will try to get you back. They can use. So I think it's very important to find a support group or consultation, psychologist, or like a cult support group. I think Ros is still being very helpful because. Even after I exit the group, I still receive some threatening legal letters or some in spiritual we call it psychic attack to make you feel like they are trying to get you. And even recently, can you believe the videos that I was doing, the so-called confession, they put it up in the YouTube channel. It's so like what group, spiritual group, you were talking about loving and why you put in the vulnerable face of the person when they trust you to give you the confession, to give you what they, the process is so complicated because they can manipulate you, and they ended up put it up on the public. So what is this? What do you think? Why are they doing this?
Well, they have to feel they're winning, and there would be very few people outside of that group that would be looking at these things. But what it does is it entrenches those that are in there even more, so that, we don't want that to happen to us. So that means that when someone is targeted like you were, and others that have left, as we know, but that's their way of really consolidating the few members they've got, knowing that the power the leaders have is totally distorted in their way of, I guess, acting out that power. They believe truly that they are the be-all, end-all of what they can give to people. But in a way, they are the ultimate in narcissism, if you like, in not being able to admit that what they're doing is absolutely fabrication. It's lies, it's deception, it's total, it's harassment in the worst way. It's legally wrong to put up something that is totally not been validated. To write confessions and to not be able to read what you've so-called said, and they keep all of those and make them up of what, so I think, that's looking at a very high end of harm, and thankfully at this point it's not a big group, and I don't think it will grow because I think people can check that out.
Yes, I think it's very unethical.
It's totally unethical.
So, how can you put up because you try to make that person look bad?
If there was ethics in these groups, if there was true ethics, if there was true love, if there was true concern, if there was true liberation of the mind to question what you're being taught in a setting where you're talking in a group, you will say, well, I don't believe that. I can't, give me evidence of that. Give me something that I can see. You're saying something that sounds wonderful, but how can that happen? We have to question those things rather than just say, well, if I believe them, they're going to help me. They're going to get me to that place where I'm reaching nirvana, where I'm reaching paradise, where I'm reaching heaven. Do you know what I mean? All of those promises, how are they being done? question that and say, hang on, could this just be fake? Could this be just made up? And I think that's what, tragically, our minds can be taken to, and that's a lesson I think that we can all learn.
Definitely, it was a big lesson, because till the end, even myself, I have this suicidal tendency, because with all this psychological abuse I went through, I feel like, I want to die, because I couldn't take it anymore. It's too much, because they put words into your mouth and they twist so many things. But this is just one of the manipulation they are good at, and they just displaying what they're capable of. And so funny is they actually accuse me I'm a narcissist. So I didn't know why. And then I checked I did the research only recently, in the recent couple months, and I just realized, wow, this is exactly what narcissists would do. They accuse you because they want to distract people from seeing themselves.
They are. It's a distraction, and it's something they've picked up as a buzzword. I think, there's this type of narcissist, that type. No one knows unless you're psychologically trained and have had an appointment with someone to really pick the traits. They're often hidden because they're very well at hiding by being loving on one hand and then totally overpowering you on the next. And we know there's enough examples around now, but a buzzword in a group often is one way that they start to manipulate and control. So lots of funny words. Loaded language. There's always loaded language. They have their own language. They talk about being a brother or a sister, or they talk about being, a lot of the language that starts to come through in some of the groups. You can identify they're all saying the same thing in the same way. So loaded language stops us thinking in terms of real language, how we communicate honestly with each other. It tends to put us in another secret sort of way, or we know what each of us are saying. We know what that means, but there's no real meaning that can be checked out from that.
I mean, if you want to educate the public about narcissists, you should put in a positive way. But instead of putting down someone to display, the product of manipulation, it's just totally.
They're not interested in that, and that's what sometimes you have to sort of come out knowing that you can't change the situation that happened to you, but you've been able to use it for good. And that's what a lot of wonderful people who've come out have gone on to do, is really to spread their experience, but also to share a lot of that with people through, how they feel. And if they come out and have a year's break, often people need that, but they certainly do need support. And sadly, a lot of them don't perhaps find that. So they go around with that within them. But just to help people, CIFS does have 2-day workshops every year, and it's all about coming through some of those obstacles that still can be there even years after. So it's good to know that in a limited way we are able to do things. We would love to be able to do more. That.
And I think it's very helpful to give self some break after leaving the cult group, because all your values, your belief system is collapsing. Because there will be, for myself, there will be a period of time you don't know what's right or wrong, because what you believe before, when you believe what is real is actual deception. It's when you will think about what's real or not. It took me a while to break down what I used to believe and start to pick up pieces and come back to what's resonate with me. And there's a period. So don't think about jumping into another group quickly.
No.
if you still need support, I think it's good to go for professional, like a psychologist or like counsel support group. If you still need some spiritual group, you can look around, but it's just for the purpose of see what they're offering. Because if you have the experience, you know how to identify, and you just have to look with extra care. and then don't easily jumping into a group. You can just take a workshop, it's okay. You just pick up something you want to explore, but you have variety. You don't just jump into one party, because you jump into another hole again, a trap easily, because you need some broader range of information for you to decide what works for you, what's not, because we all living, we need support in different levels, so you know what you need. But I think it's very important, give yourself some time to cool down, and because there could be a lot of aftercare, like after you exit the group,
aftercare is a good way of putting it.
You need to build up yourself, and then back to your normal life. And because some people might went through some depression period, like myself. I went through some time that I don't know what can I do, like I was used to be so motivated, so driven with my passion to share, some like all this whatever I learned. But when you find, it was a deception, then I say, what? It's very hard.
It's hard, but I do think that it's important too that if you can join a group that is a support type group with other people who've been through cults, it's like, my goodness, that's so similar. And that's what we've come to understand through a lot of studies. And a lot of the psychologists that are now truly looking at how people can be helped more quickly through getting that education when they come out. And there's some wonderful websites. There's people that have put on how the dynamics are used, how and that relates to you, and go, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. There's masses of people that are being pulled into these groups that look great, have a tasty outer layer, which we often say, and it looks healthy, it looks magic, it looks, inspiring, it looks, all these things have been words that former members have written about the group they originally got into. But in the end, it's there for the power of the person who set up the group that is a split from something else. And so that's a great to recover and to meet with others.
So I think it's very important to if you need support, there should be a group showing you how to take your power back. Is you are the creator, you decide what your life, like you decide what you want to do. You don't give your power away, like, oh, I trust someone and they decide my future. No, it's not. It should be a support group showing you how you can develop yourself, be confident. People get involved in this sort of supporting group because it's helping you to be independent, to be more complete. But not rely on someone, because when you start to rely on someone, you give your power away. There should be the support group should be telling you how you can make yourself better. You have the right to choose. You have the right to decide, and it's of course we take the responsibility what we choose, how we want to live our life, and that's very important. It's not to giving your power away, because that's where the control coming from. Stopping by giving power away with different sorts of manipulation, you can say, and I think this is very important to know about.
I think that's well said.
Thank you, Rose, for today, spending some time with us and sharing so much useful information. So I'll include some resources in my description section, so you can always check them out and leave your feedback or comments or any questions you want to know regarding our CALT group or any support system. And hopefully we'll see Ros in my sometime in my future video. So we'll see you next time. Thank you, Ros.
It's been my pleasure, and I do hope this resonates with some people and that they know there's always help, and you've always got the freedom to be who you are and to be the person that you are, a special person in your own right. So don't let anyone else usurp your personal freedom in a way that is going to help others and be loving and kind. So it's been great talking, Joy.
Yeah. Thank you, Ros. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.